a website where somebody can enter their zip code. They'll see the facilities that are close by, what the CMS quality rating is, what our own quality rating is. Many times it's the same. Sometimes there's a significant difference that are going to be driven by some of these underreporting of adverse health outcomes and such.
Hey out there, welcome back to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. My name is Rob. I will be your host for this episode. Today we're talking about data, specifically CMS data about reimbursement and negative outcomes in nursing homes, and how essentially the data reveals that there are some repeat offenders that tend to overbill Medicare and underprovide their services. But we're not having that conversation alone. We have the fantastic Alex Priest out of the University of Rochester, University of Rochester Simon Business School. Sorry about that. He and along with co-author John Griffin have released a paper about overbilling in skilled nursing, and it's a fantastic read. It'll be linked in the show notes. But basically, I kind of scratched the surface of his research in today's episode. We'll be talking about that. And now it's time for the Nursing Home Regulation Question of the Week and your opportunity to win a Nursing Home Abuse Podcast mug. How do you win that mug? How does it relate to the question of the week? Those are good questions. You go to our TikTok at Justice for Residents, find the question of the week video. It's going to be the one that has a sandwich in the thumbnail, more specifically a tuna melt. You're going to comment the answer to the question of the week along with your own favorite sandwich. Is it a French dip? Is it a BLT? Mine is a tuna melt. A nice, warm tuna melt is the best thing in the whole world, especially when it's cold outside. We will randomly pick one winner and announce it on Sunday on TikTok and schenkfirm.com/podcast/giveaway. The mug will be shipped at the end of the month. Good luck to everyone. Under 42 CFR 483.24b, which activities of daily living must the nursing home provide services for? Is it A, hygiene, mobility, toileting, and dining, B, communication, or C, both A and B? And that answer is, of course, both A and B. The nursing home must provide services where necessary, medically necessary, for the residents' activities of daily living, which include hygiene, mobility, toileting, dining, and communication. All right, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of the episode. As I mentioned, we're talking about overbilling and underproviding care, a systemic issue in nursing homes today. We're not doing that alone. We have the fantastic Alex Priest on. Alex is a professor of finance at the Simon Business School at the University of Rochester. His research examines fraud and misrepresentation in financial markets and healthcare. He believes that research should extend beyond academia and that researchers have a unique opportunity to shed light on real-world issues through systemic data analysis. And we're so happy to have him on the show today. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I just kind of want to really get right into it. So kind of tell me about kind of your background in finance and how you got led down the road of uncovering fraud in nursing homes.
Sure. So I'm an academic. I work in a variety of fields. Most of my research focuses on fraud and misconduct, usually in a financial setting. My co-author on this project, John Griffin, also studies fraud in many contexts and has been thinking about healthcare for a while. And so that's initially how we started getting interested in the general topic of healthcare. Now, I think that, studying these practices of fraud in skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes is a great example of something we see as academics a lot. And that's that although we know fraud exists, it's generally very difficult to measure. So, everybody has anecdotes. You can look at lawsuits, but we certainly know that lawsuits maybe represent only a small portion of total fraud or abuse. And this is, where I view our role as academics, and that we can provide a large public service is that, we have the training, the tools, and the data to systematically study these things so that we can say, not just was there a case of fraud or abuse, but how common does it seem to be? We started working with this Medicare data, and at first, this paper was really only about billing practices and has slowly morphed over time into relating this to quality of care. And we also have a bit to say about the commonly available Medicare star ratings.
So to walk us through then, kind of what data set did you look at, you and your
Sure.
co-author, and then kind of what does it show, and then what are your conclusions?
Yeah, so we are looking at Medicare claims data. So this is going to be the universe. So every Medicare claim in skilled nursing from 2016 to 2023. Essentially, what we're going to be looking at is these various billing practices. And so there was a large change in the reimbursement system, which occurred in 2019. Reimbursement moved primarily from a therapy-based reimbursement under Reg 4, meaning that providers were getting paid on how many minutes of therapy they're providing, to this new patient-driven payment model, or PDPM, which more directly ties reimbursement to the reported patient conditions and comorbidities. At a very high level, what we look at in terms of billing practices in this paper is a overutilization of therapy during the first half of that sample, and a practice we're going to call upcoding for this new PDPM, which is reporting conditions that a patient may or may not actually have in order to increase reimbursement amounts.
Okay, so kind of walk us through that. So how are skilled nursing facilities using this PDPM to kind of bring in more money?
Yeah, so let me give you an example. So under PDPM, reimbursement is tied to the specific conditions and characteristics that a facility reports a patient having. Just one specific example of this is the speech language pathology component of reimbursement is tied to whether a patient has a primary condition, which qualifies as an acute neurologic condition. Now, facilities are able to increase their reimbursement about by assigning a primary condition which is qualifying as acute neurologic. One of the difficulties, of course, is determining whether this is upcoding in the sense that facilities are recording a diagnosis that patients actually don't have, or is this just more thorough diagnoses? So this is, of course, a challenge in trying to study whether this represents a fraudulent behavior, or are these facilities just doing their job? So one thing we look at is we use the fact that to qualify for a Medicare Part A stay, a patient has to have an inpatient hospital stay of at least 3 days. So we look on the hospital claims data. Is there any indication that this patient indeed had an acute neurologic condition immediately prior to their skilled nursing stay? And we find in many cases there's not. You can also look at the relative presence of these acute neurologic conditions before and after PDPM. So prior to the adoption of PDPM, facilities received no extra reimbursement for these acute neurologic conditions. And what do you find is that after the adoption of PDPM, the same facilities, really systems or chains of facilities, so these are multiple facilities that are operated by the same common ownership or management. So the same facilities that under the previous therapy-based system had the highest overutilization of therapy, all of a suddenly receive a very large spike in acute neurologic conditions as soon as PDPM is enacted. There's no evidence that this can be supported using the hospital claims data.
What is the result of what we're saying is that upcode? Like if they've indicated this person has an acute neurological condition, they're getting more money, right?
Right.
That's the point. Okay, so then what does the data say with respect to, well, let me say this. What does the data say when they come back to you, they being the nursing homes that are under scrutiny, saying,
Right.
well, you know, we that's it's true they have these conditions and we use the money to do X. Does the data support the X?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think it's actually not at all clear whether this is a bad thing for patients. If you just like think about the fact that you might actually want your provider to be able to extract the maximum amount of Medicare reimbursement. And so when we started this paper, we weren't really sure. So we started investigating the quality of care at these facilities. And what we find is that the same facilities that are engaging in the most upcoding are simultaneously underinvesting in patient care. So, for example, they have much lower levels of nurse staffing. They have higher levels of deficiencies, which are noted on the publicly available CMS reports. They're more likely to be identified as a special focus facility, which is a designation by CMS that these facilities are quite way or are quite behind. Um, we also look at a variety of patient health outcomes. To do this, we combine this with a variety of other Medicare data sets, including hospitalizations or visits to a hospice. And we find that facilities or patients that visit these facilities are more likely to develop adverse health outcomes. So they're more likely to develop pressure ulcers or urinary tract infections. They're more likely to be rehospitalized. All of these suggest that no of these facilities that are engaged in these upcoding practices, they don't appear to actually be using those additional funds to provide higher care.
And that's like, and I guess like, I mean, obviously nothing's 100% certain, but this is, you're saying it's more likely. Like, does the data support that an overwhelming majority of the time that these facilities are upcoding, the outcomes are negative?
Right. So everything I'm saying is true on average. It doesn't mean that there are facilities which have very intense diagnoses, which are using the additional money to fund better care, but they seem to be the exception rather than the rule. So it does seem to be the case that there is a very strong component that these billing practices are tied to quality of care, and it's in this negative relationship.
So I'm not Ernie Tosh, so I'm not like an expert on CMS and rug scores and PDPMs and all that kind of stuff. However, um, it's my understanding that at least PDPM was kind of a response to
That's
the
right.
fraud of the rugs or the therapy systems. Like, what's do you, based on what you've learned as in your research? Like, is there a model that you would suggest that would reduce the fraud?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. PDPM was largely sold by CMS as the fix for this rug for therapy overutilization. Now, our main finding is that you completely change the reimbursement model. These are two very, very different models of reimbursement, and it's the same players, the same facilities or chains that were providing the highest levels of therapy overutilization that are suddenly gaming the new system. Now, I think one of my implications from that is that just changing the reimbursement system alone may not actually solve the problems that you have. And in fact, I would argue that based on the fact that it's the same systems that are doing this in both reimbursement schemes, that would tend to suggest that current levels of enforcement are not deterring these providers from engaging in these various practices. Now, I think there are maybe some common sense things you could do that would make it harder or more difficult to game these systems. For one, I don't think that tying reimbursement to patient condition is inherently a bad idea. However, if you let facilities report what conditions a patient has, then of course that's going to lead to incentives to over-report conditions that are going to be the highest compensating. That being said, any system you design is going to have flaws. if there's not enforcement when facilities or systems of facilities are um, abusing the reimbursement schemes, then that incentive is always going to be there for providers.
So at the end of the day, like, I guess it's like there needs to be more teeth in the enforcement. Like there's got to be ramifications for these players that continually, scheme.
Right. And so I'll disclaim this by stating that I'm not an attorney, and I realize there's probably many legal obstacles to prosecuting these types of cases. I think one thing is that we know that enforcement is only a very, very, very small percentage of abuse and fraud within the system. Um, Another thing that we think might be helpful, again, I'm not an attorney here, is that if there were more criminal penalties in addition to kind of the civil penalties for engaging in these type of practices. But yeah, at the end of the day, we think that ramping up enforcement would certainly be one way to cut back against some of these practices.
So I'll have a link to Alex and John's paper or their study in the show notes. So if you want to read it, you can. It's a good read. It's a substantial read. I think it's almost 100 pages, but it's worth it. But what are you guys working on now? Like, are you continuing with skilled nursing, or are you going to do something else?
Yeah, so for the time being, we're continuing with the skilled nursing. We are in the process of expanding the scope of this project to one, characterize more about the various ownership groups that are engaged in these practices. And two, we're going to farther explore some of the healthcare quality and especially the manipulation of CMS quality ratings, which is actually not something I had mentioned earlier. But what we find is that the CMS quality ratings, so this is the 1 to 5 star rating that Medicare publishes, and by far the most popular rating that potential patients are going to be consulting. We actually show that this is pretty manipulated by facilities. There seems to be pretty severe underreporting of adverse health outcomes that contribute to those ratings. As a result of that, we argue that these CMS quality ratings are not as accurate or not as reliable as many people might think. And so one thing we have done is we have published our own ranking of these systems. That's at care.watch. And that's our attempt to make our findings as accessible as possible to the common person. This is a website where somebody can enter their zip code. They'll see the facilities that are close by, what the CMS quality rating is, what our own quality rating is. Many times it's the same. Sometimes there's a significant difference that are going to be driven by some of these underreporting of adverse health outcomes and such.
And all that information will be in the show notes. But again, that's care.watch. Excellent website. This reminds me, and of course, like, I'm not telling you anything that you don't already know, but Freakonomics, where there was one story in particular how they uncovered the fraud in sumo wrestling based on statistics about, like,
Right.
The better guy would let the other guy lose if the better guy was in a good position to take a loss, and you would expect that in return, blah, blah, blah. And that's through mathematics, they figured out the fraud in sumo wrestling. And that's kind of what this reminds me of. But anyway,
Right.
but Alex, we really, really appreciate you doing the work that you do. And we appreciate you spending some time with us to talk about your findings.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Folks, I hope that you found this episode educational. Remember that you can find the information with respect to Alex's links and to his papers in the show notes. It's a good read. It's really interesting stuff that he's doing out there. If you have any ideas for topics that you would like for me to discuss, please let me know. If you have any ideas for people that you would like for me to talk to, please let me know that as well. New episodes of the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast come out every single Monday. And with that, folks, we'll see you next time. thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. Nothing said on this podcast, either by the host or the guest, should be construed as legal or medical advice, nor is intended to create an attorney-client relationship between the host or their guest and the listener. New episodes for now are available every other Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on your favorite podcast app, as well as on YouTube and our website, nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. Again, that's nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. See you next time.